Welcome to the Mama Thrive podcast. I'm Kendra Blake, and I'm so glad you are here. I believe that motherhood is far more than a life stage to survive. It is a profound rite of passage, a developmental transition that reshapes identity, values, relationships, and the nervous system itself. And when motherhood is properly understood and compassionately supported, it can become a powerful catalyst for self-discovery, meaning, and reclamation. This podcast is grounded in what I now call the reclaimed motherhood method, a compassion-led framework that honors the emotional, embodied, and identity-shifting realities of becoming a mother, rather than asking women to simply cope, push through, or perform motherhood better. Every fortnight, I'm joined in thoughtful, honest conversation by mothers and the professionals who support them, therapists, doulas, clinicians, coaches, and practitioners, as we explore what it truly means to be inside the work of motherhood and to support mothers in ways that are ethical, embodied, and sustainable. My intention with this podcast is to create a space where we talk about motherhood differently, a space for growth-orientated mothers and those who walk alongside them, who sense that there is more beneath the surface, more nuance, more truth, more permission to slow down, feel deeply, and reconnect with who they are becoming. Mama Thrive is an invitation to step away from perfection, productivity, and self-abandonment, and towards a motherhood that is more connected, compassionate, and consciously lived. Because within the challenges of modern motherhood lies not just the possibility of coping, but the opportunity to reclaim, to integrate, and to thrive with purpose. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Mama Thrive. I'm so thrilled to have you join me here today. Today, I have the absolute privilege of getting to speak to Emma Morris, who is an integrative clinician, mindset coach, and the founder of the Maya Mothers Collective, a multidisciplinary women's health clinic in Brisbane, supporting women through fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and matrescence. Blending clinical nutrition, functional pathology, nervous system science, and subconscious repatterning, Emma specializes in working with high-achieving mothers who look like they're coping on the outside but feel depleted underneath. This is an exciting conversation where we dive into all things womanhood, motherhood, subconscious, and expectations. I am so excited to have her here. As a mother to two daughters, her work is deeply informed by both science and lived experience. So let's dive into the conversation. Emma, welcome to Mama Thrive. It is so good having you. Thank you for joining me today. Well then, I think with that in mind, let's just dive right in. I always open up the conversation by getting to know those that are joining me as my guests. So Emma, can you share a little bit about your journey and specifically how it's evolved? Because if I'm not mistaken, something has happened around the way that you work and discovering that motherhood and identity shifts need more than just dietetic advice. And I'm curious to know where your journey has landed ultimately.
Yes, look, I'll try not to speak for a whole half an hour on this part, but short answer, I guess, is I am a mother of two. So I have an almost 5-year-old little girl called Elkie, and I have a 2-year-old called Ruby, and I have a husband, and we live in Brisbane in Australia. And I guess the birth of my own two children really shook me and almost rebirthed me as a person, which I'm sure you've experienced as well. And, you know, it's quite a, I would say, common experience, but it really, I guess, both births were very different. And I think they changed me in different ways. And I am a big believer that every single time you birth, no matter if it's your first, second, or fourth or fifth baby, there is something there that is unveiled, or, you know, there's another version of you that is needs to be met. And that was certainly the case for me. So I've been a clinical nutritionist for about 10 years. Before that, I was a personal trainer. So I was working physically with a lot of people. And then before that, I did a degree in psychology. And I was very interested in clinical psychology and sports psychology. And so I've always thought about the world in the way health is holistic. So we can't just, you know, I guess, look at health in one way through one lens, whether that's just psychological health or just looking at the physical health. We have to look at them both together. And so my journey of, I guess, becoming a clinical nutritionist and then opening my practice when I had my firstborn Elkie about nearly 5 years ago. I wanted to turn up differently to the way that I worked and to the way that I worked with women. I was already working a lot with women, but I wanted to create a space where mothers could truly be held in the transformative season and period that is matrescence. And I truly believed still believe that it's not talked about enough, but there really isn't enough talk or enough respect to that transitional period that we go through as women and mothers and the rite of passage that it is. And so I created a physical space where women and mothers could come and receive care through that journey, whether that was fertility, it was hormone work, it was pregnancy, and then postpartum, birth prep, all the things, and then well and truly into motherhood. And my work has evolved alongside that. As you mentioned, I used to just practice as a clinical nutritionist and really just look at the physical, look at piecing together all of the bits of the puzzle around, hormones and mental health and gut health and what we were eating and blood sugar regulation and deficiencies and all of that. And I still do that. But now I also bring into the piece the psychological work a bit more, the mindset work. I weave in a lot more around matrescence. I weave in a lot more of the sociological lens, so that myth of the perfect mother and, the good enough parenting and all of that. And I also heavily weave in nervous system work. So it really has evolved. And now I believe my work it's much more multifaceted, but I can see the change and how that's affecting my clients in the best way. And they are being met in this way that they need to. And so yeah, really, that's the short version. That's where I'm at today.
I so love that, Emma, and I can really resonate in this idea of needing to see the work of mother care support as something that isn't siloed into this is the way that I support you and it's one facet of the care. It needs to be more holistic than that, doesn't it? So I'm actually quite curious about how your journey into motherhood might have affected or changed or shaped the way that you support mother. What was that kind of internal process like for you? What did you notice within yourself in the way that you held the space for other women?
Well, I think it was different both times that I got pregnant and birthed. And the first time with Elkie, I think the first big lesson that I learned just even supporting other mothers and holding that space is the surrender piece, how much you can't control. Maybe the time you're feeling pregnant, the pregnancy itself. I had hyperemesis, so I was vomiting 10 times a day and I was quite sick, but only for about half the pregnancy. And then from then on, it really subsided, but it really threw me in that I had been working with women who were pregnant and postpartum, but I didn't realize the extent of how it actually felt until I experienced it myself. So I guess I had a lot more compassion for other mothers going through a similar journey. I also, on that same, I wanted a physiological natural birth. I was prepped in every way. I'm a sponge for information. I love learning and I'll never stop learning. I was the same in the birth world. I learned everything that I could about physiological birth and what I needed to do to try to get that to happen and all those things. And I did all the things and I still ended up with a 5-day labour and an emergency C-section. That was quite I guess, and it wasn't a traumatic experience for me because I was very involved in the decision making and I felt very supported by the people who were caring for me in that birth. And although it was different to how I expected and anticipated my entry into motherhood to be, then I had breastfeeding issues. Again, I'm a nutritionist, so I was very well versed on the, very influence of breast milk. And we had tongue ties, we had eventually breast refusal. We had a lot, undersupply, we had lots going on. And so we ended up doing mixed feeding. And so I guess through the same lesson that I kept learning was the surrender and actually you can't control everything. And it really helped me to step into that version of me that wasn't the, as controlling and perfectionistic, I guess, because that was very much the version of me, and it's the version of women that I work with now, that high achieving, people pleasing, perfectionistic type A person, where if we want to achieve something, we just try, and usually it is achieved. Whereas like pregnancy and birth and postpartum don't work in that way. So it was these lessons came and really helped to reframe the way that I even hold space for others, and the way that I am able to hold the space when things for them don't happen in the way that they would like to as well, and having that lived experience. That happened. And then my second birth was actually a pregnancy, and birth was a much more, it was still very busy. And by that stage, I had opened up my clinic and we had 17 practitioners, and it was a very busy time. And so I very much went quite full throttle, or I was very, very busy during that time. However, I did get the chance to, I felt like I could slow down a little bit. And especially when I finished work, I really, really like surrendered and slowed down. And I felt like that was a much more spiritual experience for me. So it almost was, I was less about learning about birth and about how it all works, and more about surrendering and leaning in and softening. And almost, I guess, going from that real masculine, controlling, type of person to that more feminine, flowy, softer version of me, I guess. Like that's how I would describe it. And then I actually had a home birth with my second, with Ruby. And so that experience of laboring, I get goosebumps talking about it actually, laboring and birthing her from my own home, and that being a VBAC, vaginal birth up to cesarean, and just being supported through that experience was one of the best experiences of my life. And not only to, to show myself that I could do it, I knew that I could do it. It wasn't even about that. It was just the surrender and the softness that I approached that whole birth with was just so entirely different to that first labour and birth. And so I was a little bit wiser, and I guess each time and as the years have progressed, I guess I'm finding myself stepping into that softer version of myself and that more feminine, flowy version, and not rejecting masculinity, or not just earn your rest, but take the rest that you need when you need it. How to really understand and sit with your emotions when they're coming up, rather than pushing them down or numbing them out. All of these things, how to really put protective boundaries up for myself and my family. And so, yeah, I guess all of that experience has really shaped the way that I hold mothers. And every bit of work that I do, our clinic, we obviously see clients one-on-one, but we do mothers groups, and we also do women's circles, and then I have coaching containers online. And in all of that work, I bring that lived experience of my own journey as a mother into it, because I understand that it's very nuanced and it's not black or white, and there are so many emotions and feelings, and it's a big time. So yeah, I continue to evolve.
As we do through motherhood. It's beautiful, Emma, truly, and I can really see how the thread of your lived experience has informed your workspace. It's interesting too, because I suppose you're speaking to, if I think largely about modern mothers, we've got a stronger masculine energy in the way that we show up, because for many of us, we've had to earn where we are in the world, and it's all about productivity and pushing and high achievement and being highly functional. And I suppose you said something that really landed for me, which was around this idea of rest, being able to almost give yourself permission to take the rest, but also to know that you are deserving of it equally. And it makes me think a little bit about postpartum depletion. So that sense of feeling absolutely exhausted, and so many elements, the nuance of that coming in. And it's not just rest more, isn't it? There's so much more to it. Could you expand on that from a kind of neurobiological perspective? What are the first clues that mums might need to look out for? What differentiates it from ordinary tiredness, and what makes it deep depletion ultimately? Because I think part of what I'm really hearing is that, we don't need to pathologize in order for mothers to deserve that space of nourishment and rest and holding, but that piece is often neglected because many just push through it.
Absolutely. And you're right, like we have evolved in this way, and I think the way that our generation is, and the way that we have pushed through and almost come from this generation of, a lot of self-sacrifice, a lot of martyrdom, and all of that. It's because that's how the lineage of women have had to survive, right? So in previous, generations, we've had to do this. We've had to bend over backwards for others and people please and whatnot to be safe. So we've had that modeling come down through generations, but then now we're starting to see, oh, hang on a sec, we are, maybe 5 years or 10 years from birth, yet we're still not feeling the way that we were feeling ever before we gave birth. And so there are a few factors that are involved, and many systems of the body actually, but I think that I will say it's hard for women to recognize that they are postnatally depleted or in that postnatal depletion state, because there isn't one test to say yes or no, whether you've got postnatal depletion or not. And it is a slow, insidious build-up of symptoms over time, and it's not generally a medical emergency. So it is really easy for us to push through and to kind of abandon our own needs and put our own needs and wants on the back burner. And when I say that, it's like eating well balanced meals and getting enough sleep. Like, it's things that really are fundamental to our health. And so we find that it's not necessarily in that 3 months postpartum that you are feeling postnatally depleted, although that can certainly happen. But in my clinic, we see women 12 months, 18 months, 24 months, or even 5 years or later not feeling themselves. And so in terms of what that can look like, it's a combination of, it's like a mix between hormones, because there's so many hormones that are changing throughout that pregnancy and then postpartum phase. It's stress and what that HPA axis is doing, that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. It's nutrition and nutrient stores and what they are. There's a lot mixed in. And then, of course, we throw in, baby's temperament and other challenges that might be there, even in relational challenges, all the things that and just the things that we deal with as modern mothers and what is expected of us in today's day and age. So in terms of the symptom picture that we might see sleep that is not refreshing, yet the baby is sleeping through and we're starting to get more sleep. Or maybe they're waking once a night, but you're getting bigger blocks of sleep. It's not that extreme sleep deprivation that you maybe had when the baby first came. It's things are a bit more settled now, but I'm still not feeling refreshed. I'm feeling very foggy-headed. I'm feeling more snappy and more irritable, and potentially I have some anxiety or depressive symptoms at play. It isn't the same as postnatal depression or anxiety, but I do find that the two hormones affect the brain, and then the nutrients and the stores that sit underneath all of that. And it's this interplay, and inflammation plays a role. So it's understanding what those symptoms are and understanding whether they are getting worse and how long have you been experiencing them for. And really, I find that women come to me way too late, really, when they've really hit rock bottom and they're like, I can't get through the day, I have a lot of anger and irritation, I can't stop crying, or I just feel like I snap really easily. I feel really wired, but I'm tired and exhausted. I'm putting on weight and I have no idea why, because I'm in a calorie deficit and I'm trying to move my body. All of these things, and I just don't understand why these things are happening. And generally we look to these systems and we look at the pathology and we can uncover, there's a sluggish thyroid there. There's a low iron and B12 picture. There's a zinc to copper ratio that's out. And we start to build them back up and we start to see some improvement. But it is a very multi-system picture.
It's fascinating listening to you, Emma, because I think something that's coming to mind as I'm hearing that is this: if you aren't informed of this, if there isn't a knowledge that this is something that can happen months, years later post becoming a mother, that sense of failing at motherhood can be really strong much later down the line. And especially if we're thinking about those high achieving mums that feel like we can push through and keep showing up, I can imagine that that's another layer that you also need to work with, is almost this old conditioning too, before we can even get to, actually, this is not me, this is a systemic thing, both biologically but also broader than me. And how can I hold myself with that deep compassion that you spoke about in terms of your lived experience? And maybe that's where I kind of want to land next, is actually if we think a little bit about rewiring away from our old conditioning so that we are potentially a little bit more, I suppose, open. I don't know if that's the sentence that I'd like to use, but open to receiving support or asking for help. What does that look like for a mother who has spent years putting everyone else first and feels as though she should be able to cope? Where should she begin, or where could she begin?
Well, I'm just thinking in the way that I approach this, and I think, there's a heap of different answers kind of moving through my head. I think, firstly, I would say I think that you're right in that the self-compassion piece can sometimes be hard to come by, because we tend to internalize the failings or the deemed failings that we have, or the fatigue, or the fact that we haven't got our body back, or whatever it is, we tend to internalize those as our own failures. But I think the first thing to understand about this is that it is zooming out and understanding that bigger picture piece, right, around what society has actually, what is society deems as a perfect mother, right? And understanding a big part of the work for me when I started working with Dr. Sophie Brock and doing her work around what the perfect mother myth was. So this myth that we have internalized, and when I say internalized, it just like seeped in unconsciously and passed down, and everywhere we see it, we are, just kind of confirming that the perfect mum or a good mum does this and she does that. She has a birth that's just, this beautiful orgasmic experience, and she doesn't have any issues with pregnancy. Or even on the radio, you can pick up on it. And so it's understanding where that perfect mother myth is coming in, and understanding where are you, I always say, shoulding on yourself. Where are you saying I should when you're actually, any time that you're saying I should do this or I shouldn't do that, actually stopping and creating some space to go, well, hang on a second, where is that actually coming from? Or whenever some guilt comes up, where is that actually coming from? Is that because is that a part of the perfect mother myth that I've internalized as I should do this to keep up and to be seen as a capable mother? Or actually, is it a part of my value system that I'm being reminded of and I actually want to uphold? And so that can be a really helpful place to start. And I find that when I explain what the perfect mother myth is and how it comes up, and we make the list of I should do this and I should do that, and we actually start to kind of break that up a little bit and understand the roots of these beliefs and these thoughts, we can start to give ourselves some more compassion and go, actually, I'm not broken. It's not all just my issue here. The same thing with postnatal depletion then, and understanding that this is a very real thing. And when you really think about it, getting pregnant, growing a baby, birthing the baby and feeding the baby, and just caring for that baby is the most nutritionally demanding time of our lives as women. And so it makes sense that we get depleted from that experience if we don't go into that experience with good stores of nutrients and optimal health, which so many of us don't. And so we come out the other side and we have just had this baby who is beautiful and perfect, take all of this from us. The baby has I guess, really allowed our body and our stores of nutrients to fall down, and we haven't realised. And so that's why I bang on about blood testing postpartum and understanding what those nutrients are doing so often, because it's something that we just don't talk about and we don't realise. And again, like you said, we just keep pushing it away and down as something that can be dealt with later, or it's not that bad, or I should be able to cope, so I'm not going to really raise it with anyone until we hit rock bottom. And so it's really combining these pieces of like society, like socially, what is the perfect mother myth, and am I really internalizing that myth and being really hard on myself? And then on top of that, what am I doing from a nutritional point of view? And even on top of that, what's my nervous system doing in this world where we are consuming information faster than what we have been designed to do? And we're consuming information not only at a rate that is not sustainable, and that's why we have so many problems feeling overwhelmed and feeling like we're running behind, but also the content that we consume is heavily affecting us. And again, we're not meant to know all of the things that we know in such short amounts of time and how that affects us. So it's like your nervous system is doing exactly what it was meant to do, right? We just weren't meant to be living in this way with the technology in our face from the time we get up to the time we go to bed. So when we kind of bring all that together, you can really easily see that actually this is not a failure on your behalf. You haven't done anything wrong. You've just been in a world and living in this world that has asked so much of you and put pressure on you and taught you to abandon yourself. And then you feel bad for wanting to investigate it further or thinking that you should be strong enough to move through it like your own mum did. And I think that's where, if we can understand it in that way, again, we can kind of move past that inner mean girl, and we can start to bring more self-compassion and start to work with all of these systems and these belief systems and all of that, and we can truly transform and be held and grow through this motherhood experience, which is what I experience all the time with my clients.
You can see how deeply passionate you are about it, Emma, and you make it so achievable in terms of the understanding element. It really is this juggling act of balancing the tangible, physical rebuilding, as well as the intangible, like the meaning making, the identity shifts, the agency, which I think is such a huge thing to hold. So actually, I'm going to do a little bit of a shift over in terms of the focus of our chat for a moment, because my podcast tends to speak to both mothers as well as the mother care practitioners that support them. And I'm thinking about the complexity, the nuance of this mother care work, and just how much we hold as women who love to support and are deeply passionate about motherhood. I want to pause here for a moment, because if this conversation is resonating, it's likely speaking to something deeper. Over the last few years, my work has evolved into what I now call the Reclaimed Motherhood Method, a compassion-led framework for understanding motherhood as a rite of passage, rather than something mothers simply need to cope with or perform better. This method is for practitioners who support mothers, therapists, doulas, clinicians, coaches, who can feel that the existing models don't quite hold the emotional, identity-shifting reality of motherhood. If you find yourself carrying the work home, feeling over-responsible, or quietly wishing for a more embodied, sustainable way to support mothers, I've opened a waitlist where I'll be sharing more as this work unfolds. You can join the Reclaimed Motherhood Method waitlist via the link in the show notes. And for now, simply know you're not alone in sensing that there's a different way. How do you take care of yourself in all of this, knowing that you too are a mother in the very same systems that tend to fail us, where motherhood is very undervalued and mother care is just not supported in the way? I don't want to say that it should, but I'm going to say it.
Yeah, great question. And it's something that I am continuing to learn about what works for me. I think if you asked me this question 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago, when I opened this business, the answer would be very different. And I don't, yeah, I don't even know what I would have said back then. Probably I eat well, but now and fast forward and to the woman that I am today, it's much more deeper than that. And it's understanding that if I don't care for myself, like deeply care, not a performative care, then I can't do this work the way that I want to, and I can't be the mother that I want to either. So I think for me, it's about really putting in the boundaries that I've had to learn, sometimes the hard way, because I have hit burnout many times, even before I became a mum. So it's about the boundaries. So the real tangible things that I do is I guess I have boundaries around my phone use, and social media is probably a big one, and something that I'm continuing to explore actually because of the way that it just influences, brain and our dopamine receptors and all of the things. I protect my sleep like I protect my toddler's bedtime of the quality and the amount of sleep that I get. So I'm often in bed with my 5-year-old. We sleep together most nights, and I will put her to bed at like 7:30 or 8, and often I will just stay in there and go to sleep with her. It's very, very rare. Like I literally went to bed at 7:30 last night and got up at 6 in the morning. So it's very rare that I come back out. Although of course I do have we have some time with my husband. It's yeah, I do protect my sleep. And I guess the other thing is I eat really well, and that would have been my only strategy before, but I protect my blood sugar levels. And I always say that this is a form of self-care, is like nourishing yourself and understanding the importance of nourishing yourself properly, and really making sure that those meals are balanced and you're eating enough across the day and all of that. So I think I do that really well, but I mean I've done that for a very long time. I move my body, but not in a way that punishes it. I think that, I've had a history. I used to be a personal trainer, so I used to be very, very fit and have a lot of, I used to do a lot of exercise, and I don't do nearly as much exercise anymore, but I'm much more aware of my nervous system and what it needs. So I might do more Pilates or some mobility work, or some strength work rather than, a HIIT session or something like that. I just don't have the capacity for it, and I don't want to, push my nervous system that much. And I do a lot of, I guess, guided meditation and sitting in little ritual. I guess I'm just looking around my desk at the moment, and I have, I have crystals, I have incense, I have a diffuser, I use a lot of smell to help to ground myself and my nervous system. And I guess I really take these little tiny pockets, these micro moments across the day to stop and like ground myself. It's usually transition moments. So when I get out of the car and I've just dropped my girls off to school and daycare, and I'll come in and do that and really sit there for 5 minutes and do some deep breath work and just ground for a few minutes and, you know, set some intentions for the day before I hold that space for others. I'm really intentional about that, and because I've had it the other way where I've come in after a drop off and been frazzled and stressed, and the whole day has then been frazzled and stressed. So I trying to consciously choose to do things differently in that way. And I'm surrounded by a beautiful support network in terms of my family and friends, but also my team. And so I come to my clinic and I have acupuncturists, I have massage, I have Reiki, I have a psychologist, I speak with her. So I do have a lot of support around me that I utilise. I had an acupuncture just a couple of days ago, and then next week I've got a massage booked, and I just do it to keep, not because there's anything wrong per se, but just to keep myself topped up, because I've had times where that hasn't happened and I have really felt the downfall of that. So I recognise how important it is to really care for myself in those ways.
It's so much coming up for me as I'm listening to you, Emma. I think the first piece is that the space holders, the caretakers, need space holding themselves, because we can't pour from an empty cup. I mean, it's what we often say to our mothers, isn't it? But I'm also hearing something about you live the work that you teach. And I think oftentimes we come into it as though, or at least what I've seen when I've supervised other mother care supporters or practitioners, is that we come in as part of the system, and because the system can feel so isolating, finding that community to hold us to in the work can feel really challenging. And as such, we tend to do exactly the same things as the mums that we holding. We self-abandon, for example. We stretch our limits and our capacity. We're responding to emails at 9 p.m. at night, for example. And there's something beautiful in the way that you're speaking about the evolution of your work. And I suppose in part, I wonder if that's part of how you'd attribute to having such a thriving, beautiful community-based business, is that there's been a holding of community as like a strong foundation piece to it. Would that be true, Emma? Or would you say that there's something else that I'm maybe not naming there?
I would agree with you. I think that community is such an integral value of myself and the business, and we have really tried to cultivate a space. And now, you know, almost 5 years in, our team is just beautiful and so aligned, and we all work in this space. And I guess that's the difference between me too and someone who's working maybe online or by themselves, is that I'm surrounded every day, that we see each other for our treatments, and we really truly do understand what's going on in each other's lives. And most of us are mothers as well, so we really truly get it, and we almost hold each other accountable as well, which is really beautiful. Like, I had a stint of not having any, you know, massage or acupuncture, and, you know, the girls come to me and they're like, Emma, we can see, like, you need this, like, you know, come on, book in. And like, or, you know, someone will say, I'll make you up a herbal, or, you know, and I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, thank you. Like, I actually needed that. And so it's beautiful in that way that we take care of each other. And I'm just so grateful to have a team of women who are all on the same page as me, and we all use similar tools and support each other so much. So yeah, it's a big part of it.
You mentioned something earlier, Emma, that I want to come back to here, which is that you are in this process of evolution and becoming yourself. And I suppose that's in multiple facets of your life, isn't it? But really what I suppose I'm holding, and my perception is that our experience of matrescence, there's an intensity period, but I feel like it's lifelong. I know this is one of those things that is fairly controversial around what that really looks like, and there's evidence to one side and evidence to another, but I think the process of motherhood is constantly evolving. Maybe out of curiosity, how would you say that you, in the process of all of this care work that we've just named, and the holding and accountability that you have with your team, how do you take care of yourself when, for example, one of the clients' mums that you come in has something that is similar in the expression of their motherhood journey to your own matrescence journey, and it evokes something within you? How do you take care of yourself within that space? Because I think the complexity of maternal health care is that we are living and walking the same space, although with different lived experiences, of course, and those common themes can be quite evocative in the way that we hold mums.
Question. It's not something I've really thought about too much. I guess if a client has a similar experience to me, I firstly can really truly understand that, and I can empathize with her, I guess, is like the biggest thing that I kind of take out of that. Yeah, I've had a lot of ups and downs that I haven't named as well in just around over the last 4 years with lots of different things. And I guess if I do find something triggered or something that evokes something in me, the way that I deal with it, I've got a few ways that I will support, I guess, my mental and psychological and spiritual health even. And I guess I'm a deep thinker, and I like to think I'm pretty emotionally aware. So I do a lot of journaling and do a lot of like getting things out of my head, a lot of brain dumping. I also will talk about things, whether it be to my family, to my husband, to my friends, but also to my therapist as well. Yeah, I guess that's probably all I've ever had to do in terms of that, because there's nothing that I can think of that's been, yeah, quite, quite big. I just more so get that feeling of like, oh my gosh, I have been there. Like that empathy of like I truly understand what you're going through, or if it's something that I'm currently going through, it's still an empathetic. It's like, yeah, like I understand, like I am living that. And depending on the circumstance, might say that to that person if it's appropriate or not. But yeah, I guess there's something even in that, even for me, even in that shared experience, that's almost, it's less triggering, I guess. It's more the best I can do to answer that question.
I know it's quite a tricky question, but I think you've answered it probably in line with how I hold myself too, Emma, because I think what I'm hearing from you is that empathy piece, that shared humanity piece is what makes this work so powerful, because I think our world is so insular, isn't it? We no longer have the front porches on the front porch. Our worlds are closed behind closed doors. And the moment we create, I suppose we deconstruct the hierarchy of I'm the expert and you're the one that I'm serving, I think there's something that can be really deeply healing about that. And I think it's often moving towards more of that feminine energy that we spoke about earlier in the call. But I'm also equally hearing something about a framework or a structure that you have to build in some version of containment for yourself, which I think sometimes is lacking in the way that practitioners, mother care supporters are taking care of themselves, because again, we may come in with needing to be that perfect carer, for lack of a better way of putting it. I need to do this all by myself. And the more we break down those barriers of thinking that this all needs to be done alone and I can't be human in this, I think there's something really beautiful. And I suppose, what's the word that I'm looking for? I'm looking for a big foundational word here and I can't find it. But transformative, I suppose, is it? And I think what I'm hearing is that in a way you've crafted and created that. And I suppose it's continual evolution, but it's really amazing to hear. I so wish I could be in Brisbane and it could come through to the beautiful space that you've created it.
Yeah, I just want to say on that, I
So
think,
on that note,
sorry,
yeah,
I was just going to say one thing, and that is
no, go for it. I'd love to hear it.
I definitely have felt that, I think, in owning this business and being the leader of this business and being so passionate about it, I felt for a long time that I wasn't able to ask for help or show my vulnerability as a leader, and especially as a health practitioner as well, right? But I think over the last 5 years, I have been really able to let those walls down a bit more and to show much more of the highs and the lows and the vulnerability that I have, as every human has. And I think it's probably just given me the evidence that you are so supported. And if you do show that authenticity and that vulnerability side to you, it doesn't make you a weaker person, right? It doesn't make you a weaker version of yourself to even ask for help or show those things. And so for me, it's probably cultivated that evidence around like, oh, if I do this, it actually really supports me and it brings me closer to my team and it brings, this sense of cohesion, and therefore also helps my team feel more at home and more able to share. So yeah, I think that's something that's definitely happened even in the last 2 years, I would say, in the business. And being the leader doesn't mean that you have no vulnerability or anything like that. I think the ability to share that and to be supported and to accept that support and that help and to, be human but passionate, a human, a mother, a passionate mother doing this work whilst mothering, whilst holding all of that. And even the weight of the world at the moment is huge. But I think, yeah, coming back to that feminine like power and
Yeah, I so see you in that, and when I've listened to some of the podcasts and your work, that thread is very strongly evident in the way that you portray what you are so passionate about. So I think that's a really apt place for us to land, and I'd love to hear, Emma, on the back of that, if there's anything that you would like to say to a mother listening to this, or even a mother care practitioner, anything that kind of comes to mind at all. I know that's a rather broad statement. And then on the back of that, please share a little bit about what you're currently offering, the services that are out there for anybody who would like to know a little bit more about your work. It will also be in the show notes on the back of this.
You're broken, or there is something fundamentally wrong with you if you need help, or if you need support, or if you find this journey hard. Because motherhood in this day and age, motherhood just full stop is hard, right? Let alone supporting other mothers. And so we're all holding so much in our own motherhood and our own mothering journey. And I think being able to, raise that hand and ask for the help when you need it, or recognize or have that self-awareness to go, I need to book in with someone to assess my blood work, or, to speak about some concerns that I'm having, is a really strong thing that you can do. It is the strongest thing that you can do. That is what strong is, in my opinion. It's not, pretending like things don't exist. So you're not broken and you are not alone, and there is so much that can be done to support you. And in terms of my work, my main work that I do at the moment is I offer a coaching container for mothers, and it's for mothers just at any stage of their journey, but probably we've got mothers with 6-month-olds, and we've got mothers with 5 and 7-year-olds, but those that are high achieving and wanting to understand themselves better and to be able to and maybe rewrite some of these belief systems that are keeping them chronically overreactive and overwhelmed, and so they're wanting to do things better, and they're wanting to understand themselves more. And so we go into all of that. We go into all the systems that I talked about today. And we do that over a minimum 6-month period, and we do that via one-on-one stuff, so with me or my team, and we work through with a practitioner, but we also do it in a group setting, and we have group calls. And I think that's part of the medicine, right? As what weaves in quite beautifully with our conversation today, is the medicine is being seen by other women as well, and being validated and heard, and not necessarily being told what the solution is to the problem. It's just being actually seen and heard, and that's part of the medicine that I offer in this group container. And we have women, I'm proud to say we have women from all over the world in this container. So that's my main offering.
Emma, thank you. What a privilege to be able to get to speak with you. So wonderful to hear about the work that you're putting out there, and truly I'm in awe of what you're creating. It's very, very inspirational. So thank you so much for your time, for the capacity to have this conversation with you, and all the best with everything to come. Before we close, I want to leave you with a gentle invitation. If you're listening as someone who supports mothers, and today's episode has stirred recognition, questions, or even a quiet exhale, you might be exactly who the Reclaimed Motherhood Method is being created for. This work isn't about learning more techniques. It's about understanding motherhood as a developmental transition, working compassionately with identity shifts, nervous system load, and emotional ecology, without burning yourself out in the process. I'm currently gathering practitioners into a waitlist as this work continues to take shape. Joining doesn't commit you to anything. It simply keeps you close to the conversation. You'll find the link in the show notes. And wherever you are in your journey, thank you for the care you bring to mothers and for being here.